Good evening, and welcome to the July 24th, 2025 called board meeting of the Bear County Board of Education. It's 6 p.m., and the meeting is now called to order. We appreciate you all being here this evening. We have two very important items on our agenda tonight that impact our community. Could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we consider the SRO and millage rate items together as a singular item due to the fiscal interdependency.
All right, I have a motion to amend our agenda to combine our discussions regarding our SRO and our millage rate. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Kelly. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we'll begin with Ms. Houston, our assistant, let's see, she has a new title, but I always forget until the last second, financial officer,
Yes.
To give us some information about the millage.
All right, thank you. Good evening. We are here to set our millage rate tonight. I'm going to do a brief recap, and we'll take any questions afterwards. I have asked Jessica Garrett, our tax commissioner, to be here tonight in case you have any questions that she can help us answer also. Our 2026 general fund budget is $226.3 million in expenditures and $213 million in revenue, using a millage rate of 15.5 mils. This created a deficit or use of our fund balance of $12.9 million. After our tentative budget was set, the Board of Commissioners let us know that they wanted to adjust the amount the Board of Education was billed for school resource officers. We budgeted $1,065,000, excluding the bonuses, and the Board of Commissioners requested $1,932 million, a difference of $867,000. To cover this amount, our millage rate would be an additional 0.195 mils. So that would bring us to 15.695 bills, and that is what we have advertised. And we did our 3 budget hearings on, or our 3 millage rate hearings. In a separate event or talks, the board tasked us with reviewing our vacant positions. And we were able to identify 21.5 vacant positions that we could freeze while we evaluate the impact of these unforeseen, unbudgeted expenditures. These frozen positions amounted to $1,862,000, which relieves our taxpayers of 0.427 mils, so we could go down to a millage rate of 15.268 and still come out with the same deficit that we originally budgeted. So at 15.268, it will amount to a deficit of 12.9, which we budgeted for after applying the additional amount that the Board of Commissioners gave us on the SROs and freezing the vacant positions. Do you have any questions? We do have that little chart that I gave you that we can go through the millage rates, but at 15.5 is what we budgeted for. However, we've been able to make a couple adjustments, and then, of course, the Board of Commissioners. So we would be looking at a 15.268 millage rate, so we would get back to the $12.9 million deficit.
Ms. Houston, I do have a question because I've got the table that you had given us. I just want clarity on this. And I think I have this right, so help me. So where we're at with 15.268, as you'd mentioned before, and so what that would, set us back, or, from the fund balance. What is the difference between the 15.268 versus the 15.193?
The 15.193 is the calculated rollback rate that the county gives us, and so that would give us less property taxes. Of course, 15.268 compared to 15.193, less income property taxes, so that would amount to a $300,000, a little over $300,000 increase in our deficit.
So that's a $300,000 difference. Okay, thank you.
Hey, I have a quick question. I'm really excited that everyone's done the hard work to get us to a position where we can look at going back to the rollback rate for this coming year. But we know that really close in the future, we have a lot of things that we can't foresee and can't predict, such as we know that we'll most likely have an increase in the number of our residents who take advantage of the age-based tax exemption next year because some missed the deadline this year for
Yes, ma'am.
completing their taxes and things. We also know that we have a salary study that we're going to conduct this year, and that may also have an impact on our budget next year. We've already been working in a budget deficit as we're spending $12.9 million out of our reserve fund this year, and we don't really know what the full impact of the SRO budget's going to be next year. Do you have any idea if we do the rollback this year, what we might be looking at next year in terms of the millage rate?
So fortunately, we do have that fund balance of $12.9 million that we can use, but that's going down, and we're not going to be able to do this every year. So a mill to us is about $4.5 million. So just to cover that deficit, it would be about 3 mills. But we can this year look at positions, look at other expenditures, try to cut as much as we can. We'll have new property coming on the tax digest that may be able to help, but we still have the impact of that age-based tax exemption, like you said, the SRO contract, and then we can't continue to go into our fund balance for the budget. So 2-3 mills, something like that.
Any other questions?
Yes, Ms. Houston, I do have a question. Will you just briefly give us a little overview? Because I know a lot of the public have missed several of our hearings, but what is our current fund balance reserve? And can you explain a little bit of where it's going and how it's been earmarked? And give us a little information on that.
Yes, ma'am. I love talking about fund balance because there are so many misconceptions out there. Fund balance is made up of an accumulation of our net income or net losses over the years that the school system has been in business. On our 2024 financial audit, it shows our total fund balance $97 million. However, school accounting is totally different than other governmental accounting and business accounting. We have about 20 funds in that column. So $9.5 million of that fund balance was outside of the general fund, so it wasn't even the general fund money. $15.7 million was assigned for future year appropriations or balancing our 2025 budget. So we had $71.7 million in unreserved or unassigned fund balance. Even though our financials are not done right now, we do not anticipate using the full $15.7 million fund balance for our fiscal year 2025 due to not filling positions and departments not using all of their budgets, filling positions at a lower rate than the previous person had left that position. So our total fund balance at June 30th, 2025 is projected to be $83 million. That's total fund balance. But we have assigned a portion, $16 million, of that fund balance for future needs. We also are projecting using $12.9 million in this fiscal year for the expenditures that exceeded revenues. In other words, we are not covering $12.9 million of our expenses with a millage increase or current taxpayer funds. So the balance of an unassigned, unrestricted fund balance is $54.1 million.
And just to ask and clarify, what is the state's mandated rate that we have to have in our fund balance reserves, and what is good practice?
There's no mandated, but the good practice is 2 months. Or about, I think it's about 15%. And our budget is $226.3 million, so we're at 23.9%. This means if we receive no funds, we can cover 2.8 or 2.9 months, about 3 months, of next year's budget with our fund balance. Another way to look at this is that we can cover 7 furlough days. If y'all remember back in the 2008, 2009, we had to do some furlough days. So we could cover teachers pay our pay for about 7 days. Like I said, best practice is to have no less than 2 months of current year expenditures. So we are in a great situation. Of course, you don't want to have too much in your fund balance because it could be misconstrued that you are overtaxing your taxpayers.
And can you also explain how that helps us when it comes time to borrow money as well? Our fund balance and our physically overall,
So,
the health of our school district, how that's helped us over the years?
That's right. So the way school budgeting works is that our year is from July 1st to June 30th. So July 1st through September, we're still paying teachers, and we're getting school supplies and our subscriptions and everything lined up. So we're spending a lot of money in our July, August, September, October dates. But we don't get tax income, and that's a good portion of our budget. We don't get that until October, November, December. So we have to be able to cover those expenditures until that property tax money starts coming in. Also, a lot of our federal programs are reimbursements, so we have to pay ahead and then wait for that reimbursement to come in. So we have to have a cushion there to be able to get our schools open and started with all the needs that they have at the beginning of the year.
Ms. Houston, I just want to go back to, and just make sure I wrote it down right, so I'm just going to ask for clarification again. So our fund balance amount is 83 million?
83 million is going to be our projected total fund balance.
Okay, all right, and that is, I think you'd mentioned 23.9% of our overall budget?
23.9% of our overall budget.
Okay, and so just as a matter of comparison, do you have the availability of the Board of Commissioners overall, their fund balance?
I did look this up. I looked this up a few weeks ago. The Board of Commissioners fund balance as of their last audit was $40.8 million. Unassigned was $38.9 million. And that's what you really should use as your unassigned fund balance.
So the 38.9 million.
38.9 million.
Okay, and so what percentage of their budget is their fund balance?
Their 2026 budget for the general fund is $66 million. So their percentage is 54.5% or 6.5 months of budgeted expenditures.
Okay, all right. So 38.9 million is their unrestricted, right? Because that's what you said to go by.
It's estimated because I don't have their what they did in 2025, so they might have had to use a little bit of their fund balance.
I appreciate that.
So we're probably I estimated about 36 million is their unassigned fund balance. It's 38.9 million in their audit, but then I think that they're going to be using a little bit of their fund balance to balance the 2026 fiscal year. So I took that out also,
Okay.
just like we do for us.
So from a comparison standpoint, we have 83 million, and again, that's our estimate, as you had mentioned before, which is 23.9% of our operating budget. They have 38.9, and again, you give them that little caveat there, but that is 54% of their operating budget they have in their fund balance.
That is what I calculated. Yes,
Gotcha,
ma'am.
that's a significant difference.
Ms. Houston, and I just want to, some of us are business people in the room and some of us aren't, but it's not recommended to ever pay salaries and benefits out of a savings account or a fund balance, is it?
Right, you don't want reoccurring expenses to come out because you're going to deplete it and it won't be there
Yeah.
for any sort of unforeseen expenditures. We've had a lot lately, so it's nice that we had that fund balance there to cover us when it was needed.
Thank you.
Ms. Houston, you had mentioned, you were talking about some of the freezes when we first started out, the job freezes. And the freezes that the board set in place are not specifically to fund the SRO position. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
Right, it was a separate thing that the board tasked us with. The freezing of the vacant positions will allow us to evaluate the financial impact of unforeseen, unbudgeted expenditures while assessing the ongoing need for each position. This approach aligns with the directions given to us by the board. As attrition occurs, we will carefully review each vacated position to determine whether it remains essential, both operationally and financially. In accordance with the board's directive, all positions will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis as they become vacant.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Houston, can you tell them what this board's bond rating has been over the years?
I don't have
You don't
the
have that?
exact rate, but it's like a AAA plus. I think there's only 3 other Board of Educations that are higher than us, and I think one of them's Cobb. But we Forsyth, Cobb, and another one, but we are right up there at the top. We have a great rating.
And that's based on our ability to pay our creditors back.
Pay our
because of the way
creditors
we've
back,
managed-
being
Because of the way
physically-
that we've managed our money over the years, correct?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. We're real proud of that.
Ms. Houston, if I could, I do have a couple of more questions regarding finances. Oh, thank you. I know we've got this on our screen. Perfect. So regarding some of the questions that we were unable to get answered because of our inability to have the ongoing meetings with the Board of Commissioners regarding taxes. And I understand that you've invited our tax commissioner, and so some of these questions, I'd like to start us out with that, if I may. So Ms. Garrett. And Ms. Houston, you can stay up there too, and just in case I go back and forth. So, Ms. Garrett, the Board of Commissioners said it can no longer use citizens' tax dollars that are in the general fund for school-related expenses. The county said that is because county voters approved last November to exempt seniors from paying school taxes. So my first question to you is, how long has the Barrow County school system had a senior property tax exemption?
The first senior property tax exemption was in 1998, and it was House Bill 985 for seniors that were 62 and older. And it was a $20,000 exemption based on a $20,000 or less income.
Okay, so we've had one since 1998. And I'm assuming that last year was not our first year, obviously, because you've got 1998. Can you just give me a brief timeline? So obviously, there have been changes since 1998. Can you give me a brief, timeline and what those highlights are to this point where we voted in November? Is that all right?
Yes, and the exemptions do not go away. If a senior has this exemption and they don't come in and apply for another one, that exemption still stands. So we do still have some seniors that only have House Bill 985.
Okay.
2007, we added House Bill 1124, which raised the $20,000 exemption, an additional $60,000, and made it an $80,000 exemption with an income of the federal poverty guidelines. And then in 2025, we added House Bill 1088, 1087, and 1086, which are the current exemptions we're applying this year.
Okay, and so what, because as I recall, just in the limited research and understanding, obviously you have a far better understanding of, the tax commission than I do. So in the one in 2025, if I'm not mistaken, in 07, I think it was, with the age-based, and of course you have the income-based as well, so I think there's certain criteria for that. But what was basically the cost or the appraisal value? Was it $200,000 in 07?
Yes, most of the expensive homes were $250,000.
So what does that mean? So if I own a house and I have the right age, if I'm 62, at least 62, 63, what have you, and I meet the income, what's required on that exemption, and my house is $250,000. So
So if your house was, generally about 2007, we were about an average $150,000 home community. So you would take 40% of the $150,000 and then deduct your $80,000 exemption. For most seniors, that would zero out the school taxes.
Okay.
For most.
Now, so my understanding in what we passed this past November because our property values increased significantly, okay? Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it did increase, and so therefore our property taxes would increase. And from what I understand, so the average senior citizen that had a home of that cost, now it was increased, the property value was increased to where they paid significantly more taxes, or taxes again, whereas they didn't pay taxes. Am I correct?
Yes, when the values increased in 2023, some seniors that had not paid taxes for years were now seeing a portion of tax increase because they had to pay a difference based on what the exemption did not cover.
Okay. And so obviously that was a move with the prior board and legislation to get that passed. So those seniors that were before exempt from paying taxes would be exempt again.
Yes, the
Okay.
meetings I was involved in, it was a point to try to serve the seniors who had not seen school taxes in many years.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Ms. Garrett, does the county, the other side of the taxation of this county, do they have any specific senior tax exemptions for Bear County citizens?
They do. They have a senior tax exemption, which is House Bill 1767. It's for seniors 65 and older. It affects the county M&O portion. It is a $20,000 exemption with income of $25,000 or less. We also have House Bill 1485, which is a frozen exemption, and that's available to every citizen with homestead.
And that's all they've ever had, or has there been more before that?
Those are the two that are currently there and that we've had.
Okay. And do you know what the dollar amount that the county takes in from seniors over the exemption amount is?
I can't give you a specific dollar amount.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
order to find that, you would have to touch every home that had that. I would say the average that the county takes in on a $300,000 home is about $500 per parcel. If I'm estimating, we have about 5,000 senior exemptions currently, and that's a rough estimate, probably about 2.5 million.
And is there any other things that those tax dollars are exempt from?
That would be outside of my purview. I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Thank you.
Do you know of any communities that have similar tax exemptions?
I do know that Jackson County has 3 new exemptions going in this year. I think they have a 62 to 65, which is a $40,000 exemption with an income of less than $400,000. 65 to 69, which is a $75,000 exemption with income of less than $400,000. And a 70 and older that get a $125,000 exemption with income less than $400,000. And then they have some independent school districts that have separate exemptions from that. Clark and Oconee have a tax value freeze with no income limits for their seniors 65 and older. And then Walton has a home and 1 acre are exempt from school tax with no exclusions. And then after 70, they can be exempt. A home and 1 acre will be fully exempt, and any land over that gets an additional $75,000 exemption.
Do you know if any of these communities, these counties that you just mentioned, also have intergovernmental agreements where their counties and their school systems split cost?
That would be outside of my purview, so I couldn't answer that.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Madam, does anybody else have questions?
I
I'm
do.
sorry.
One more follow-up.
I did. I have
Go
a
ahead.
question. On those counties you mentioned, do they have, their county commission have an additional tax exemption for seniors?
Their county commission, not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of, okay.
I have just a comment. It seems like since we've already had a tax exemption in place, the most recent one was because of the increase of property values in such a sudden manner. It was almost more of a correction, in my opinion, than just an all of a sudden tax increase or senior exemption, like it was already there. We had to do a correction because of the increase that happened so suddenly.
Would you consider it a correction? I think it was more, in my point of view from the meetings I was in, it was more an outreach to serve the community better.
Yeah,
Right. So,
Because I
and
think
thank you for
everything was
that.
processed correctly. It just, once the values changed, your community that you had been able to serve, you were no longer able to serve as well.
Yeah. So I guess that was what I was kind of trying to say, is
Oh, I'm
that it
sorry.
seems like it was sort of like a correction to make sure we were still serving our seniors.
Yes, ma'am. As far as the meeting that I
Not
was
something
involved in,
completely new.
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Bradford, for that, because that was going to be my comment as well, based off of what I was trying to see before. And those were some of the questions, again, that we had for the commissioners, because this was not a new tax exempt. This was just a correction or a modification of the existing one. And again, we've had one since 1998. So this was, the one in November was not done specifically to exempt seniors from paying school taxes. That's not an appropriate statement. I agree, Ms. Bradford, it's more of a correction of what was existing. So thank you for the clarity on that.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment and say thank you very much for being here and allowing us to ask you these questions about the senior tax exemptions, and just reiterate real quick that we have had a version of a senior tax exemption in place since 1998, and it has not been an issue until this point for any kind of discrepancies with how we collect those tax dollars. And again, those are only school tax exemptions, not county ones that we have in place. And the county has their own senior tax exemption that's separate from ours. But we've had an iteration for the school M&O taxes since 1998, and we've just updated those throughout the years through different House bills. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett.
All right, so I think it's time to vote on the millage rate, unless you have any questions.
We added it. We combined both of these, so we're going to get through the full conversation and vote at the end.
Got it,
Yeah,
got it.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Bowen, I think we may have some questions for you now.
Hello.
Hello. Dr. Bowen, I'll go ahead and start if that's all right. I just have one of the questions that I have for you.
Yes, ma'am.
You ready? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and again, I know we've all done a lot of research. In your research of other school systems that are similar to ours, can you please let us know what you believe is a fair compromise monetarily that this board can do or send to the Board of Commissioners so that our community can continue to heal and become more united?
Well, when looking into other systems, we find a couple of things. One is there's renegotiation going on in many other systems now. But what I found on average seems to be somewhere in the neighborhood of the school system contributing 70 to 80% of salary and benefits seems to be about average or fairly normal. And that seems fair to me. I think that would be not only fair, but it also represents a sizable increase on our part for the contribution. So I would fall in that range of 70 to 80% of a school system contribution for salary and benefits of SROs. I also should have added to start with, and excuse me for not doing that, we have invited Sheriff Judge Smith to join us tonight in case, which is very likely that you may ask me things that I don't know that he may know and have a strong opinion about. So we certainly want to engage Sheriff Smith in a conversation as you all see fit.
All right, I appreciate that. So let me just kind of go back and again, there's numerous other schools in our area and obviously in the state and throughout the country that have SRO programs in the schools. Now, you mentioned 70 to 80% of salary and benefits. And I know in our prior discussions, so what's considered salary and benefits are direct cost. And then there are indirect costs. You didn't mention that, so that might be a question that we can bring in the sheriff for and really kind of discussing those points, because there's a big difference in that.
Sure.
So if we could. So Sheriff Smith, can you just give us, an overview of what's considered direct and indirect cost?
Yes, ma'am. A direct cost would be salary and benefits, as you've explained. Indirect cost would be head to toe, what we call hat to boots, equipment, cars, guns, licenses, training, all the extra, gas, fuel, you name it. That's the indirect cost for that employee or that deputy sheriff, SRO.
Thank you.
Sheriff Smith? This might be a you or a Dr. Bowen question, but I know one of the points in the community that's been brought up is that we do receive some safety grants. And so this might be where a Dr. Bowen might step in on this, but can you explain really how much each school kind of gets and where that money goes and why it might not be applicable to pay SROs with it?
Yes, we've been getting, the number that's thrown out there now for the upcoming year is $68,000 per school. We haven't been getting that amount. That's a newer increased amount. We've been getting $47,000 per school, which we want to clarify too that we also have 3 programs in Barrow County Schools and also 3 other sites, including the PDC, maintenance, and transportation. So that's 6 sites that are not receiving those grants because they are sent specifically to schools. They're not sent to programs like AIM or SIMS or Horizon. So if we're dedicating money to an enhancement to a school, which is one of our buildings, we also need to include all the buildings, not just the schools, which would include, let's say, 3 programs and 3 other sites where we have employees, staff, we have visitors, and even students in those areas too. So we've been receiving $47,000, and Governor Kemp and the legislators have recognized both the increase in need, but also the increase in costs of these safety enhancements that are needed. And they have since raised their generous commitment to school safety to increase it to another level for this year. We thank the governor, obviously, and the representatives for trusting the schools and investing in school safety. There is no guarantee that grant funding continues. There's certainly no guarantee it continues at that level. Grant funding typically also comes with some strict spending parameters at times that can change from year to year. But in addition, we have made, the grant funding typically comes with spenders, but in addition to that, we have made other purchases using, in addition to the SRO discussion, it seems appropriate to bring in other things that we purchased for classrooms, including classroom phones. We've purchased metal detectors for middle schools and high schools, as you remember. We've also purchased the Centegix program, alert tool that allows us, an emergency alert system. And that was not a one-time purchase. That was a 5-year agreement that we are in 2 years in now. So in 3 years, we're going to have to renew our Centegix agreement or a comparable system because I think we all agree that that is a vital part of our safety plan. The cost for that Centegix renewal is probably going to be in the neighborhood of $900,000. So a very sizable amount that we're going to need. That's one of the things that safety grant funding is designed to do. That's one of the enhancements. We're also considering some other enhancements, some other upgrades. We need to upgrade our access control system, which governs building safety and access to buildings. We also are looking at some other camera software to help us with weapons detection. Those are all necessary as well. So in summary, I would say, I'm giving you a long answer, but in summary, I would say it's difficult to use grant funding for a long-term recurring expense because it's not guaranteed. And we don't want to dedicate it all to one particular expense because we have multiple expenses and layers that we want to add. These continual layers of safety that the board has committed to adding have made our schools the safest places that our students will ever visit. And they're safer than the grocery store, they're safer than the mall, and they're a lot safer than the skating rink, no offense to the skating rink people. But we want to thank you all tonight for that commitment.
Thank you. And I do appreciate any of the funding that we do get from the state, and I welcome that to continue to flow if anyone is watching. But I will say that as much as I appreciate that, when you break it down to per school, I've seen invoices come in a regular board meeting where it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace video camera equipment. We're talking about some of just the nuts and bolts of things that have to go into it that aren't necessarily line items like metal detectors or Centegix renewals. So we're talking, this is helpful, but it's not really scratching the surface of the total buy-in of what school safety cost
Agreed.
outside of an SRO.
Agreed, that's
Thank you.
correct.
Dr. Bowen,
Go ahead.
excuse me.
Sorry.
This may be a question for you or maybe Ms. Houston. Could you tell us a little bit more about the $1 million federal grant that we received, what that was for, and when we applied for those funds?
Yep,
So
that
Ms.
would be
Houston,
me.
question.
All right, when the incident happened on September 4th, we had a lot of FEMA and GMA, they all came in and they're like, here's some avenues that you may want to go down. So we identified the U.S. Education grant, it's called Project Serve, back on September 9th. And we started talking to them about how we could use those funds to help us recover. And so me and Dr. Thompson and Pam McNamara, we all kind of worked on this grant over the next 8 months, trying to get all of our expenditures. I mean, we had the small pod that we used. We had transportation back and forth to Chi East. We had the substitutes at Appalachia High School to help our teachers be able to get out and get some therapy themselves. We had an additional administrator at Appalachia High School, and then we had the big pod that we brought in, so we were able to get those students back on campus. So we submitted the grant on May 6th, and we got the award on June 20th, and that was $1,097,000. We would have loved to gotten more because we had so much more in expenditures. We had the grading of the pod, but they don't cover anything construction-wise, so that was $650,000 that we are not going to get reimbursed for. The pod lease, they're only covering it to March of 2026. So we still have another $1.5 million that we're going to have to pay on that pod that we're not going to get reimbursed. And then, obviously, the future renovations of Appalachia High School, we're going to have to look into that, and we can't get reimbursed for that either.
So if you combine the federal grant we received for about $1 million, and then the state
The
funds.
federal grant of $1 million.
Of $1 million.
$1 million.
And no more. And then the state funding we received, we've roughly received about $2 million.
About
So
$2
look,
million.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And our expenditures,
Are well over 5.2 just for the pods, but then we talk about the weapons detectors. So that was another 800,000 or 600,000 there, and then the phones in the classroom was about 300,000. So we're well over $6 million in expenditures.
thank you.
Sheriff Smith, will you remind us when our first IGA, or intergovernmental agreement, was set into place between the County Commission and the Board of Education for our first SRO, or our first partnership?
I know it well. My mom was the first SRO in this community in 1997.
Oh, my goodness, that's awesome.
Yep, 1997 at West Side Middle School, West Side the best side, as they say,
That's awesome.
under the direction of Sheriff Joe Robinson, the retired sheriff before me.
Thank you. I also have another question or two, if I may. So would you mind, similar to my question to Mrs. Garrett, would you mind sharing what you've kind of learned in your research about, and the other sheriffs that you speak with regularly, like some of the best approaches to an IGA such as this, and best practices?
Well, I talk to a lot of sheriffs, but the main thing is communication. That's the first and foremost thing. Talk with your school system. Try to figure this out. Now, I will say in full clarity that not a single IGA is the same. There is absolutely zero template for it in this state. I don't think there's a national template for it. I believe it's what your community wants is the template that you use, and what they expect and what you pay your elected officials to do and put as a priority is the template.
Sheriff Smith, I have a question for you as well. I looked through all the years of budgets for the county, obviously, when we're looking at each other's budgets and trying to understand where money's at between the two of us especially. And it was bizarre to me because I had seen that you had a sheriff's office budget and then you had a detention budget in previous years.
That's correct.
So can you explain to me why there was a need to add an SRO budget this year that's never been an asked item? Because obviously those budgets that you're asked are asked from the BOC.
I was directed by the county manager at the direction of the BOC to separate the funding for the SRO and completely cut it out of the sheriff's office side. So in the past, the SRO budget, the complete budget, was funded out of the sheriff's office side. Detention separate. This is the first year that I was asked prior to our budget to separate the direct and indirect cost for SROs.
And obviously that's a huge undertaking, Sheriff. I understand that. I see our budget numbers and working with Miss Houston all the time. It's a lot of money to look at. And so how did your team go about separating? So the number that we received from the BOC that the BOC showed us, is that specific to an SRO, or is that specific to you, Sheriff, as a sheriff's deputy that works for you? Because that's what they are.
That's specific to a sheriff deputy.
Okay.
They just happen to have a title, and you asked them, you mentioned the work that went in it. Colonel Mike Ham, my assistant Danielle Austin, Trey Wood, the CFO, and his team sat down and spent hours down to details, down to what a bullet cost from head to toe when I say direct and indirect costs.
And so one of the things that we've heard from the other side, the county commissioners during their meeting, one thing that I've heard that sometimes troubles me, and I think the problem for us and why we're at this impasse is because we all serve the same citizens. We're all here to serve the same, you serve the same citizens that I do. And
That's
so I think that hearing the possibility or the desire by members of the BOC to privatize our school resource officer program, which is ran by you in the sheriff's office right now. I did a little bit of research, don't know much about it, but you as the expert, can you tell me what that might cost, just an initial startup? And I'll have a follow-up for you after you give us those, please.
But just if you were to create Barrow County School Police Force with what we currently provide, you're looking north of $8 million to start that today. That does not include your liability in any way that you're going to take on.
And so that's,
it is another duplication of law enforcement services in this community.
and so that's why we typically have an IGA, so we don't duplicate those services. You have a service that this community already receives through you, and then you can serve as well in the schools as your deputies serve as SROs, correct?
That's the way I agree.
And let me clarify, because I know when they were sending it to me as an IGA, that's an intergovernmental agreement, because we speak in acronyms sometimes, and my husband used to be a county commissioner, my late husband, he passed away. But Clay always said, those of y'all that worked with him and knew him, and you heard him say this many a times, it's all the taxpayers' money. It just depends on what pot it comes out of. And I know, Judge, you heard him say that many a times. And that's true. Back when I was on the school board and Clay was on the county commission, we worked together with Beth Caldwell, John King, Paul Withers, and that group that was there then, and we helped keep the 4-H program back then. I'm sure, Judge, you probably remember that. And it's all the taxpayers' money. It just depends on what pot it comes in out of. And so that intergovernmental agreement is so imperative, because we represent all the people. We represent the same people. So when I heard this was an issue and we had some commissioners that were kind of standoffish with this. I didn't understand it, because I go around and I work with our legislators and talk to them all the time and represent Barrow and say, hey, let's get together, because we're all representing the same people. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to appreciate, what Darlene and what Jared and they've done. But I'm kind of concerned that that's not what's going on. We all represent the same people. We shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. We need to work together for our citizens and do what's best for Barrow.
I agree.
So Sheriff, a follow-up to that question on the privatization of the police force is, you obviously talk to other sheriffs and other law enforcement officers. What I've seen in talking to some of your SROs as well, they're sheriff's deputies first. And they work at your pleasure, and they enjoy their job working for Sheriff Judd Smith and working in that department. So if we were to privatize it, I don't know if y'all have actually talked as a group or with the leadership there, but is there a number of SROs that currently serve that would even consider going to a privatization?
It's hard for me to say. I'd
Yeah.
say probably less than 10% might come work for the Barrow County school system. Not knocking y'all as a system, but these are seasoned, tenured deputy sheriffs.
Absolutely.
Lots of years of service. They don't want to keep that on the table. They work here because of Lieutenant Tim Lateral and Sergeant Maxwell and Sergeant Boyd. I get to work beside them, and so that's why. But to answer your question, the easy way is, if you were to create a police department today, let's say you voted on it today, good luck, you've made your schools less safer.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Sheriff.
Sheriff Smith, I have another question. And I've been pondering this in public a little bit myself. And the impression I got was that the Board of Commission no longer feels that our public school grounds are part of public safety. And so I just want to ask you, who do you include in your definition of public safety and who you're obligated to protect and serve?
Every single person in this county.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to publicly thank you again. This is our State Sheriff of the Year. I want to thank you, your leadership, and every single one of the men and women that serve under you. I feel safer in their presence. I know my son is safer in our school system because of them and in our community. And so many of the people in this room and outside of this room that I care about. Thank you for your leadership and your care. And I'm proud that y'all are our SROs. And I say that, I'm proud of that.
To echo that, this board and these men and women and John Skinner have put into place, you put into some things into place that help us make it easier to make it safer. So thank you. I have a rising senior. I have a vested interest in this as well. A lot of people don't think that. They don't know that. They don't understand that most of our deputies have a reason and a vested interest, and many of you do too as well. When you drop your child off, we have the same vested interest.
Thank you, Sheriff Smith, and the same as Ms. Hendricks was saying, but I still have a couple more questions for you, so you're not. So just hold that thought.
Okay.
So when you were talking about, and I know Dr. Bowen also gave us some examples of a school, schools between the Board of Commissioners, Board of Ed, 70%, 30%, sharing those costs, 80%, 20%. And I understand it differs and depending on the county, and you even said yourself, there is not a single template for an IGA, and I can certainly appreciate that. So a couple of questions that I want to get really specific when we're talking about direct and indirect costs. So you shared what those indirect costs are: vehicles, weapons, et cetera, bullets, uniforms, all of that. What's really direct cost is salary and benefits.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Now, my first question to you is, if we were able to approach, and understanding that the Board of Commissioners have asked for direct and indirect cost, for obvious reasons, we have concerns with those indirect costs. Give me your thoughts, if you could, on direct versus indirect, and really what would be the best approach in going in that direction.
Please take this respectfully when I say this, but I trust that you're going to buy laptops and school buses. I don't need my Board of Education buying pistols and AR-15s. It's not your lane of travel to or purchase things that keep our deputies safe and our kids safe. It is a tool that we use every day, but I think that is a very dangerous, slippery slope that you will be purchasing items. And might I remind you, on the side of that Explorer, it says Barrow County Sheriff's Office.
I see.
If you
Thank
purchase that, you now own that item. It does not belong to the Board of Commissioners, and maybe that's the plan. But I think that is a slippery slope to ask for these items. I trust that you're going to buy equipment that makes the classroom a better classroom and make our students a productive citizen when they graduate.
Mm-hmm.
Leave the safety up to us that the citizens have tasked us to do until I'm replaced or till I retire, whatever comes first. But that's the short version. I don't think that you need to get on the slippery slope of ordering uniforms, bulletproof vests, tasers, weapons, firearms, bullets, hats, boots, licenses. I don't think that's your lane of travel. And I say that with all due respect because you're very smart people, but your purchasing policies are way different than mine.
Thank you for that. So if I could just, one more follow-up question with that. And so I understand your feelings regarding indirect versus direct. And so what I hear you're saying is the focus should be on direct cost.
That should where the negotiation be, yes.
I understand. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So Sheriff Smith, if the Board of Education was to make an offer to the Board of Commissioners for 100% of salary and benefits, what do you think that offer is? Is that a good offer? Is that a reasonable
What was
offer?
the offer?
100% of salary and benefits. That's direct costs.
You are more than reasonable to make that offer, in my opinion.
Sheriff Smith, I have a question. When we're talking about direct versus indirect cost, would it not be, when we're talking about intergovernmental contracts, would it not benefit the county also and the taxpayers, instead of having a county police department or a school system police department, for the county not to have these people out there all over the county where we have schools and we're paying for the building and the lights and all the other things that we pay directly, but to have y'all housed out there also, so if something happened all over this county, y'all can quickly get to it as well? Is that not a benefit?
Some would say, and I'm just going to assume, Ms. Kelly, what you're trying to say is, some would say, and I've heard it said on the board, that they should never leave the school building. And if I'm paying 100% of the cost that you're asked, they never leave.
Right,
But let me explain to you that they are a deputy sheriff.
right,
And in every policy, it says that the deputy sheriff acts at the discretion of the sheriff or his designee. That's every one of my policies.
right.
So they work for you if you own your police department. They do not work at the discretion of the sheriff, which I work at the discretion of the people.
Right. So
That's the best
it
way I
would be
can
a
say it.
benefit to the county as long as it's still county, not school
The
system.
benefit is you've got more deputies closer to other options.
Right,
in
so
case
that they
need to
can
walk
be
out.
utilized by the
And we've-
county
We've
right now.
debated this. We've had deputies leave the building, and by some standard, and some on the board believe that they should not leave the building, period.
Not on this
They're very
board.
uninformed. That's
Not on this board.
They're
The
very-
county commission, okay.
They're very uninformed and uneducated with that comment. That's what they are.
Okay.
We'll call it what it is. Because if that's the way that you want to believe, the day of September the 4th, Deputy Matt Cook locked down Heyman Morris and was the fourth deputy in that building, ready to handle business.
Okay. All right,
Thank you, Sheriff.
thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a couple of comments and a statement, if I may. Sheriff says, I think I speak for everybody on the board. It is not our intention at all to have any SROs that is not associated with your department. We are not looking to privatize the safety of our children.
Thank you.
Okay? As a board member, I believe we should remain steadfast in our commitment to the community. And when we are faced with adversity such as this, I think we should lead with grace and integrity in making decisions that prioritize the well-being of our students, teachers, staff, and the broader community. We know that ensuring a safe and supportive learning environment is essential for academic success and peace of mind for our families. That is why we have been committed to building the SRO program along with the Barrow County Sheriff's Office across our county. Their presence is a proactive step towards strengthening the safety and security of our schools while also fostering positive relationships between students and law enforcement. At the same time, we also understand the importance of being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. In that spirit, I believe we should take meaningful action by rolling back the millage rate, providing a much-needed tax relief to our community, while still investing in critical priorities, especially in light of the year we have all experienced. I believe this decision would continue to reflect our dedication to balancing safety with fiscal responsibility and ensuring that our schools remain places of learning, support, and security for all. Madam Chair, in alignment with our values, our responsibility to the community, and our commitment to the safety of our students and staff, I move that we roll back the millage rate to 15.193 and pay 100% of the direct cost of the salary and benefits for our SROs.
I'll second, Madam Chair.
All right, we have two motions on the floor. Let's begin with the first, which is the millage rate. We have a motion to roll back the millage rate to 15.193. And we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passes 9-0. All right, and then the second motion is related to our SROs. And the motion is to consider paying 100% of the direct cost of salary and benefits for the 24 approved SROs, starting with this school year, the 2025-26 school year. Was that a second from you, Dr. Callaway? Mr. Callaway, on
Yes.
that as well? Okay. All right. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I just have to add in that that would also go for any additional SROs in the future that this system needs and this county needs.
All right.
Not just for those 24, but anything in the future.
For the 24 and any future
Yes, ma'am.
SROs? All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes 9-0. Thank you all. I would like to take a moment to thank Sheriff Smith and Jessica Garrett for being here tonight to answer questions for us. Having a clear understanding of the financial impact of this controversial issue is imperative to us making the best decision for our community. I know that the full board also appreciates all of the community members for coming out this evening as well. This board is ready to resolve this issue once and for all. It is the desire of this board and has been the desire of the board to work actively and transparently with all of our elected officials within our county, as we all represent the same citizens. It's important to note that the intergovernmental agreement between Barrow County Schools, the Sheriff's Office, and the Board of Commissioners enhances community safety and maximizes our resources by sharing expenses and personnel, leading to a more effective and efficient service delivery for all residents. This collaboration and partnership reduces overhead cost, eliminates duplication of tax expenses, and fosters a unified approach to addressing community needs. As Sheriff Smith said, just hours after the tragedy, we will get through this together, and love will prevail. If we have no other business for this evening, we will now adjourn.